Welcome to this third session of Pirkei Avot. This time between Pesach and Shavuot, and we are going to start the evening by counting the Omer. So I had to check because I never remember which day we are. So thank God for the internet. So tonight, so let's say first the blessing of the Omer together, and we will read the day, which day we are today. So, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer. So today is the 27th day of Yomer Hayom Shiv'a ve'esrim yom shehem shlosha shavuot v'shisha yamim la'omer. So today is the 27th day, which 27 days, which are 3 weeks and 6 days into the Omer, and it's the traits of Yesod Shebanetzar, the foundation that is within eternity. So we could actually spend the whole evening discussing that, but you'll see that in the text we're going to read tonight, there's a bit of that as well. So we are going to go into the Pirkei Avot now. So I'm just, 27 was last night. Sorry, Monique, thank you. Yeah, we are not Tuesday, we are Wednesday. So sorry, it's the 20th. I knew that I would make a mistake. So I hope this will be edited before going into the YouTube channel, because I will say this rabbi doesn't know how to count. So 28th day of Yomer tonight. My apologies for that. Okay, so the third chapter of Pirkei Avot is a collection of sayings, and I've picked up some of them. I have no idea how far we're going to go tonight. So the way we're going to do that, we are going to read the text together, and I will just ask you to unmute yourself anytime you want to say something. I can see only 3 or 4 people now because I'm sharing my screen. So please unmute yourself. And if you have any comment on the Mishnah, any comment, any thoughts that comes out of a reading, so please unmute yourself and let's share it. So the first one is, Akavia ben Mahaliel said, Omer, histakel bishlosha dvarim. Look at 3 things. Ve'i ata va lidei avera, and you shall not go into the power of sin, of transgression. Avera is more transgression. La'avor means to cross over. And this very, very famous saying, Da me'ain at bata ule'an ata holech, know where you come from, ule'an ata holech, and where you are going. Velifne mi ata ati litan din v'cheshbon, and before who you will in the future give din v'cheshbon, kind of account. Din is a judgment, and cheshbon today in Israel, cheshbon is the invoice, when you pay, cheshbon, but it means establishing, where you are now. In English, translated account and reckoning. So now it goes into, which is quite unusual with Pirkei Avot, it goes into explaining itself what it means. Usually it's open to interpretation, but for us really to understand what it means. Me'ain bata, from where do you come? Mi tipa serucha, from a putrid drop. Oh, it's quite graphic. Ulean ata holer, and where you're going to? Limekom afar rima vetolea, to a place of dust, worm, and maggot. Velifne mi ata atid litandin vecheshbon, and before whom are you destined to give an account and reckoning? Lifne melech malchei amlachim akadosh baruch hu, before the sovereign of all kings, the Holy One ever to be praised. So here I've got a translation which is not gender neutral. It's a more traditional translation, but you get the gist. It's only grammar anyway. So any comment first? Is there anything you wanted to to say first, as we just read this first.
Go ahead, Rosemary.
Yes, please go.
I wanted to say, if you wanted to look for where the Pirkei Avot are, I mean, where would you look?
Okay, so they are in the Siddur. There are also, if you have internet, let me check if I can. If you go on the internet, sefaria.org, you've got all Jewish texts there, and here it's taken from Sefaria, so this is where it comes from. Okay, any other question? Any commentaries? So how do you understand this? Da me'ain ata ulean ata holech. So remember, know, lada'at, know where you are coming from and where you are going. So when you have got this putrid drop and this place of maggot and worms and dust, well, what does it do? What does it tell us?
Don't take yourself seriously.
Okay, so can you expand a bit on this?
Well, it's like a big spike, you know. Here's us on Earth with all of the corporality of it, and here's where you're going, or where you're going to speak to your maker, and here's it's between. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a spike.
Okay, yeah, interesting. There is a certain element of humility about we in a way we've. If you think about the odds of millions of spermatozoids becoming one individual, you know, how many of them have to die for one to become a human being? So there is something very humbling to think about this first fight at the time of the conception of a human being. And also, what do you think about the end? You know, you're going to place of dust, woman, maggot. Okay, I'm just going to speak and please, yes, go. Yes.
Sorry, that's the physical body. Yes, that goes. What about the soul? The soul obviously goes.
Flora, very good. So here we have a distinction. Before your body is the result of almost a chemical process, which is kind of miraculous at the start. And your physical body will end up in this place where, you know, dust, you know, dust to dust, etc., etc. But before whom you are destined to give an account and reckoning. And this is where we've got this distinction with another part of what being a human means. The body is something that, you know, is going to decay and disappear, and of course there's no room here for cremation because it wasn't you know, it wasn't something that Mishnaic Jews would do, but there's this idea of a body that, I mean, the dust maybe, but you, the essence of who you are, is actually this you that is going to lifnei, before the King of Kings, the Holy One ever to be praised. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I can't really see you. You've got the idea now of this text. So how do you understand this? You know, this Mishnah. What does it tell us? Yes, Monique, please. Yeah.
So a couple of things came to mind. First of all, that we can't take it with us, that for all we might be scraping and going after shiny things in our lives, at the end of the day, that's actually not what's going to matter. It's about who we are as human beings and what we made of the life that we were given, because it's a gift. So this life that we were given, and we have to, there's an accounting that happens as a result. It's like, I don't know how many people in this room saw the movie Defending Your Life. an older film with James Brooks where he dies and he has to defend himself and his actions during his life, or he might end up in the bad place.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah, no.
It's very good, and Meryl Streep. But it's very much about that, you know, reflecting back on whatever happened. You know, what do you make of it?
And there's something that never dies. There's the corporeality of being a human, but there's something that doesn't die, something that goes beyond, something that has a life after. But it's not freestyle. It's you have to remember that everything you're doing here as a consequence. You have to, you know, din v'cheshbon. Din is really this idea of judgment, and cheshbon is accounting for what you've done. So the life is all about, you know, this knowledge and understanding that there is a trajectory from a very physical, natural process of coming to life and having a life and finishing our lives in the end, which we all go through a natural process. And there's something that doesn't die. Okay, any other comment on this first Mishnah? Yes, Jonathan, please.
I was just going to say it's sort of implied that you don't just give an account at the end, that you have to account for yourself to yourself during your life, knowing that at the end you will have to sort of deliver an account.
Yes.
So you it's realistic in a sense. It says you're born and then you die. But when if you know you're going to have to give an account to yourself, to somebody at work or wherever it is, you have that in your mind while you're doing the task.
Yeah.
So it's a reflective life is being asked for.
Yes, and death plays a very important role in that. And death puts everything into perspective. It's not death that we are afraid of. It's death as a stage. You know, it's one stage it's part of life, and death is part of life. Rosemary and then John.
It's something like some of the things which come up at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Yeah, very much so. It's about, yeah, it's very much, you know, it's the time when we have this moment, which is a pause in the life. You know, I don't remember who wrote this book now, but oh gosh, I'm so bad with names, but it's an American rabbi who wrote a book about the high holidays, and he said that we are actually rehearsing our death during the high holidays. Which is not a very, very cheerful idea, but if you think about death being not you know the trauma we when we see someone else dying, I don't know about ourselves, but death as this kind of horizon upon which we actually yes, yeah, thank you, Monique. Yes, this is really totally unprepared. It's exactly this. It's a very, very good book. To be honest, I used it once for my holiday sermons, and people were completely depressed. So I probably didn't use it the right way. But it's exactly what we're talking about during the high holidays. Yes, I think John wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's really a question. So it's just when this reckoning will be taking place. So it could be during our lifetime, say on Yom Kippur, or it could be immediately after death, or it could be at the time of the resurrection of the body.
So I think it's a very good point. There's also this other rabbinic saying that said you have to consider yourself, you know, as you, in a way, you're eternal. Your life is eternal, but at the same time, you have to consider each day as if it was the last day. So again, this idea of this time of din v'cheshbon for future can also be taken to today. You know, maybe that's the Jewish version of karma. Simply karma. You know, actions have consequences. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we now just jumped into the very deep part of this Pirkei Avot. I came across a parallel version of this from another Pirkei, Avot de Rabbi Natan, which says, anyone who takes these 4 things to heart will never sin again, will never sin again. And it's kind of, you realize something and then you change your attitude, where he comes from, where he's going, what he will become, which is not in the Pirkei Avot, what he will become, and who is the judge. Who his judge is, sorry. Where does he come from? From a place of darkness. Where he's going? To a dark and cloudy place. What will he become? Dirt, worms, and maggots. And who is his judge? The King of all kings, the Holy One, ever to be praised, so the Holy Blessed One. So there's, it's in a way, it explains a bit this idea of place of darkness. From a place of darkness to a place or dark and cloudy place. We don't know what was before. We always think about afterlife, but we don't always think about what was before life. If there's an afterlife, it's more like possible that there was also before a life before. Okay, so we're going to go into another. I'm not going to read the whole Mishnah. I just wanted to spend some time on the first bit, which is this one. There is a political theology, a theology of politics in Judaism, and lots of it, some of these texts come from Pirkei Avot, and this is one of very, very good example. And we are going to a very different place now. That's the Mishnah that comes straight after. So you see, it's kind of interesting to see how these texts, are connected and not necessarily connected. So Rabbi Hanina, Sgan HaKohanim, so the kind of vice high priest, said, Heve mitpalel bishloma shel malchut. So pray for the peace of the government, the welfare of the government. And the reason is, again, very pragmatic. For were it not for the fear it inspires, every man would swallow his neighbor alive. So what do you think of that? And for those who remember the Hallel, Psalm 118, there is one verse that says, it is better to trust in God than to trust in any other human being. And I think these two texts are really related here. So what do you make of that? Pray for the welfare of the government, for were it not for the fear it inspires, every man would swallow his neighbor alive.
What is meant by the welfare of a government?
So in Hebrew is shalom, shloma shel malchut, the peace of a government.
Again, I don't understand what that might be.
Okay, so
particularly when we think about, perhaps we shouldn't be, but thinking about government at the moment. What are we praying for them to do, or how to act, to behave?
Okay, so shalom, shloma shel malchut, the peace of the kingdom. Malchut is kingdom. It's interesting because we have a coronation in a few days, so there's also maybe a discussions about institutions, but praying for the peace of the government. So how do we understand? I think someone had raised their hand. Yes, Andrea, please. Yes.
I was going to say it's the same as Jeremiah. Pray for the welfare of the nations, because if the nation prospers, so will you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's why we say the prayer for the royal family on the prayer for the royal family on the Shabbat in the service.
Is it a reference, a sort of like the modern thing was the book Lord of the Flies, you know, the kids on the island with no control and look what they got up to. And is it sort of saying without government and society, you know, we'll just descend into savagery?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. So Caroline, I have John and Caroline. Yes, please.
Lord of the Flies, I was thinking of the internet.
Can you expand on that?
The way people allow themselves to be their worst selves on the internet when they think they're not being recognized.
Okay. John, what did you want to say?
I just thought this reminded me of Hobbes's idea that in the state of nature, life would be nasty, brutish, and short, with the war of all against all. It's the same idea that if there isn't a government, then people would just, all their selfish instincts would just run riot.
I think that's yes. So remember when these texts were written, the Mishnah was written or compiled, you know, in the first 2 centuries of a common era. So when Jews were living under Roman rule, so they were living under a very powerful state, and the Roman state was very powerful. And in the 1st century and in the 2nd century, there were 2 Jewish rebellions, which ended up very badly. And, you know, the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed in 70, and then was the Bar Kokhba rebellion in the 132 and 35, I remember. So, you know, it was a very tumultuous time in a country, in a part of the world that was under the rule of a very powerful state, the Roman state. I mean, even today, states, European states, are very much based on, you know, Roman law and how the power was wielded. And we say that, yeah. There's also this notion, being a minority, living in a country. If you don't have a government that protects us, then we can be victims of anti-Semitism. I'm just taking this the Jewish angle on that. So Andrea mentioned, you know, Jeremiah 22, 26, that says, you know, pray for the government, because if the government is strong, you will live happily. We've got this one, which is probably more pragmatic. Pray for the government, because if they don't do their job, there will be anarchy and jungle. And then there's another text in the Pirkei Avot that says the government, in a way, in essence, government is protecting us from human nature. So it's a very pragmatic approach to the necessity of having a government, and at the same time, it's like, you know, it's based on a kind of like in Psalm 118. You know, it's best, you know, you can't really trust your fellow human beings if there's no rules. So it's really a call for a society based on law. So it's very different from what we had before, but could we find a connection between know where you come from, where you're going, and din v'cheshbon? Well, what's the kind of society is emerging from these 2 Mishnayot, of these 2 texts? There's something very powerful for rabbis. What's important for rabbis to the Mishnah? So what do we need in order to function? Order, law. Do you remember this passage in the book of Numbers, Numbers 25, where you have, Pinchas, Aaron's grandson. So they are all sitting, you know, around the temple of a meeting, the tent of a meeting, and they see an Israelite coming into the tent of a meeting with an Egyptian woman, not Zviava, yeah. And they have sex in the tent, which is kind of not appropriate, but Pinchas was infuriated and he went into the tent and he killed both of them with a spear. So the rabbis took that, and of course God was very happy. God said, because you've been jealous for me, you've been zealous for me, I will give you a priesthood for eternity. And so this is the establishment of the priesthood on the descendant of Aaron in Numbers 25. So when the rabbis in the Talmud studied this passage, they are very uncomfortable because what Pinchas did, he took justice in his hands and he killed people, and God seems to have actually condoned it. He said, yeah, perfect, thank you. You did it out of zeal. Kin'ah in Hebrew is this idea of zeal and jealousy for God. What radicals do that, people kill in the name of God, and it seems to the text seems to be supporting this idea. So what the rabbis did in the Talmud, in Tractate Sanhedrin, they said, okay, so this is written in Torah, we can't really change it because it's Torah. But what they said is, had Pinchas come to us asking permission to do what he did, we would have said no, because he needed to go through a clear process of a clear legal process. For the rabbis, what was very important was to have clear processes. The Beit was much more than conversion and divorce. The Beit covered all the aspects of Jewish life, and everything was codified. There has been this very strong sense that in order to live together in a society, we really need to have common rules to which we all adhere. There's this idea of a law that actually allows people to live together. So that's a very strong rabbinic idea, and we have an example here. Okay, so we jump from one place to the other. This is exactly what the Mishnah does. So the next passage, so that's what time is it? Yeah, okay, I'm going to go to this one because it's a kind of interesting one, again, about how we live in society. So it's Mishnah number 10. He used to say, Kol sheruach habriot nocha hemenu. One with whom men are pleased, God is pleased. But anyone from whom men are displeased, God is displeased. So that's the first part of the Mishnah. The second part, which is connected in a way or another, Rabbi Dosa ben Harkina said, morning sleep, midday wine, children's talk, and sitting in the assemblies of the ignorant put a man out of the world. So these two bits in the Mishnah are connected. They talk about different things, but they are still connected. So let's take the first one. How do you understand that? One with whom men are pleased, God is pleased. But anyone from whom men are displeased, God is displeased. How do you understand that? It's kind of weird, like, is it reputation, fate, fame?
I have a question, Rene.
Sure, yes.
Because it's not clear. When it says God is pleased and God is displeased, with whom is God pleased and with whom is God displeased?
Aha, okay. So let's go.
Is it don't piss off your neighbours?
Okay,
don't be
I'm
one
just
of those
gonna...
bad neighbours.
Yeah, so the one with whom men are pleased, a person, okay, so kol sheruach habriot nocha hemenu, anyone whose spirit of the beings is upon him. So yeah, it's kind of, the Hebrew is a bit challenging here, but the idea is when someone someone who has a good place or a good name among his fellow human beings, God is happy. But someone who has a bad name, someone who has a bad reputation, God is displeased. So why do you think God needs that to approve or disapprove someone? Well, what would make someone popular, or someone with whom men are pleased? Well, what would make what is behind it?
Is it to do with perhaps that man is made in God's image? Something to do with that?
Okay, I'm not sure if I see a connection now, but let's, yeah, okay. Let's keep this, I'm not sure. So let's keep this idea, but I'm not sure. Okay, I know that, so Rice and Ron have, so Rice, yes.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of, it's to do with, you know, the idea of love your fellow as yourself, in the sense of, like, if you're being respectful and nice to others, then that's going to please God. And also, one thing that I remember reading in a commentary on this is that it specifically says with whom men and not with whom all men, because you're never going to please, because I think that's one thing that you can fall into, is like, oh, I have to people please and everyone has to like me, but no man or woman is going to be liked by everyone. But you're doing the things that are pleasing, like essentially the principles of love your fellow as yourself, and that is what's going to please God.
Yes, I think you touched something very interesting. I think what's really matters here is how we behave in the world. If we are good people, if we perform acts of loving kindness, if we are perform act of charity, tzedakah, etc. I think that's what really what the text says. I've got Ron, and then Paula, and then Liz.
I was going to say essentially the same thing, that it's someone who does good things is liked by other people, and therefore God is pleased with that person. But it doesn't, I mean, we are living through a time where some horrible people are adored by large segments of society. And I'm wondering, what does that say? I can see what it says about our society, but how do we read this Mishnah in the context of that?
Very good, very good. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. Yes, because is the fact that someone is loved by all the others, does it make this person good? But that's a very valid point. So we'll go back to that, because okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I'm not sure if I can see everyone with. So Liz, and then Pete. Liz.
Well, I was thinking of it in terms of sort of people living in society together and getting on. And it just seemed to me that it really is a contrast with the text we were looking at earlier about people tearing each other apart. And
yeah.
So God is happy that the people are, or well, certain people, if you look at it that way, are doing good things to each other in society.
I think there's a fundamental Jewish idea here that it's not words that make you a good person, it's your actions. You know, I don't know if you have the same saying in English, but in French you said, you know, there are no words of love or only acts of love. It's not what you say. You can speak very well. You can be, you know, the best orator in the world. But what really distinguishes you from other people is your capacity. You know, is your action. And in a way, it's also, you know, going back to what Ron said, it also acknowledges the fact that not all people are like this. So there are bad people. So there's something which we could explore a bit, is about, you know, populism, for example. You have people who are loved for the wrong reasons. I mean, for wrong reasons for us, but, you know, people who make themselves loved for because they have a motive behind it. They're making themselves loved by, the obvious example. I'm not naming names because otherwise you're going to go into politics, which I don't want to do. But we all know politicians, who tell us what we want to hear, and then they can be loved. But it's not for the right reason. Here, if you involve God, there can be no populism here. If God is pleased, God is not pleased with populism. If we follow, the logic of his Mishnah. Pete, yes.
I was getting concerned because, as you mentioned, popularism and the idea that someone can become the kind of force for what a society deems to be good. But I then read the second bit. Am I right in feeling that the get out clause, if you like, is that mention of the assemblies of the ignorant?
Mm-hmm.
That actually we have a duty to decide where ignorance sits within that. So we're not people pleasing, we're actually focusing on doing the right thing and actually protecting those who perhaps can't protect themselves.
Yeah, so in Hebrew is Ham Haaretz, the people of the land. It's a very derogatory term, which the ignorant, people who don't know what we're talking about. So there's a sense of to be a good person, you need to have values and understanding. Paula, did you want to say something? I saw that you left a message in the chat. No? Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I'm using my phone, so it can be a little bit funny at times. I was going to make a similar point about V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that the text sort of, I've heard a saying when it says God speaks through other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, if other people are happy with how you conduct yourself, it is a way of God communicating through their approval. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure if I understand what you're meaning, Paula. Can you expand a bit more? Sorry.
Yes, it's saying, if God, it's from the text there, which was saying, if other people like you
Mm-hmm.
or approve of you, then God will approve of you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is perhaps Hashem's way of saying other people are my representatives.
A sort of validation, kind of validation of. So yeah, I see. So you need also the others in a way to understand where you are.
Yes.
So we can't define ourselves alone. We need a sort of validation of people around you that you're doing the right thing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. Yes. Jonathan Van Juan.
I just wanted to say quickly that there seems to be a tension between that need that we can't live. No person is an island. We can't live on our own.
Mm-hmm.
We have to live in community, but we have to decide what community we're going to live in. Are we going to sit in the? I love the phrase "sitting in the assembly of the ignorant."
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that describes many experiences in my life. But how we're going to use our time and who we're going to be with. Are we going to sit and drink midday wine and sit in the assemblies of the ignorant, or are we actually going to be with people who validate us and are positive and coming back to becoming a worm, a part we can account for, we can give good account for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Juan.
Shalom. Hello, everyone. Hello, Rabbi.
Hello.
I find it quite interesting, the text, because it seems to me that you start to read it separately, right? The two sections, the whole paragraph, but then it seems that the rabbis are quite clever. They tell you, okay, you have to do, I mean, you are okay if people think that you are okay, but following immediately, the text tells you exactly what they think you have to do.
Yeah.
So I think there is quite an interesting connection there. So probably that is exactly what they expect that you have to do. I would imagine. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I think there's a connection here. You're right. It's not in the air. It's very pragmatic, very practical. There are things that, okay, I'm going to put the text again on the screen, because if you look at the Hebrew says, okay, v'shivat batei knesiot shel amei haaretz, the Beit Knesset, the synagogues of the ignorant, motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam, so bring a human being out of the world. So we've got these four things: morning sleep, midday wine, children's talk, and sitting in the assembly of the ignorant. So can we try to unpack a bit what it means? If we look at these four things, that motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam, that put a man out of the world. Why? Morning sleep, midday wine, children's talk, and sitting in the assemblies of ignorant. Caroline, yes?
I'm having a lot of trouble with this text.
Okay, good.
Let's start with children's talk. Sometimes kids know what they're talking about, and you have to listen to them. And sitting in the assemblies of the ignorant, I just want to bring one example. It's a comedian, Sarah Silverman. And what she started doing in the United States was to go to the MAGA people and just listen and film it. Talk to them and listen. And it's a real major step towards de-escalating conflicts. And so it's, for me, this is too easy. Also, the first thing about people pleasing, you're never going to get to tikkun olam that way. Really, there are times when the whole internet thing of the solipsismus of the machines giving you back what you were looking for, as opposed to what a friend will do, which is say, come out of it. What the hell are you doing? And you sometimes that's I think that's what's missing right now, is listening, and then also sometimes giving feedback that's honest.
So if I understand, you're saying that this text is a bit dismissive and judgmental in a way.
It's superficial. I can't unpack it in a way that makes any sense to me.
Okay, very good point. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Sorry, I just need to. So Andrea and then Jan Martin. Andrea, yes?
I was quite happy with the idea of that it's not a very good idea oversleeping and being lazy in the morning, or going out and getting pissed at lunchtime. I mean, I've certainly seen that in offices, not a good idea. And even sitting around with people who are talking rubbish. But I really object to this bit about children's talk. I mean, what do you expect children to do? I've got to. It's the opposite of what I would think. The idea of disapproving of children's talk.
But I guess it's probably also a sign of the time. It's probably also the fact that these texts are very old, and the notion of children, other than little adults who are not yet formed, is quite recent. children as part, of evolution, and but it was a very top-down education. The adults bring things down to the kids to bring them up to the level of adulthood. So
but they're still not going to learn to do what the adult wants if you don't talk with them.
I agree with you.
I think that's just plain immoral.
And yeah, and if you think, I was talking with a friend this afternoon about spirituality, and we talked to what she said something very, very interesting. She said that when she was a child, she was more able to connect and to connect with spiritual moment without having to think about it, without having to seek, like going into the woods and having this kind of wow moment where you feel that something is happening to you. As adults, we use reason and try to seek that. Kids will have this experience without, I don't know how to say it, but there's something natural with kids. They have access to emotions in a more natural way and direct way that we as adults we have. So we can learn from kids. I believe that we can learn from kids. I don't think that everything that is young is necessarily good because it's young, but if we I think I don't remember who said that just a moment ago, Caroline, we need to listen to each other. And this Mishnah in a way is a bit problematic. Okay, I've got Jan, Ron, and Paula.
Thank you, Rene. This has been really interesting listening to this. I see things very slightly differently here. Looking at at that text that we were just looking at, talking about childish talk. I don't see this directly as talking to children. I see it as an analogy between wisdom and people who don't have wisdom. They're talking about childish talk and assemblies of the ignorant, and the two are somehow linked. Mm-hmm. And then going back to the previous text, when we were talking about pray for the peace of the government, this word wisdom went through my head again, listening to that, because I was wondering whether we shouldn't actually be praying for the government to use wisdom in how they rule us, which would then lead to, hopefully, peace. And we only have to look at Sudan to see that there's a little bit of wisdom lacking there. And also those rules that we're living by, someone has to make those rules. And so we have to pray that the people who are making the rules that we live by are using wisdom while they're making them. So I can see this. I don't know if this is how you see it, but I see it as needing wisdom to come all the way down, all through these texts that we've been looking at tonight. And I did miss the first 10 minutes, actually, and I'm sorry I was late in. But without wisdom, and a lot of that comes from the study of Torah. I mean, we do realise that. So maybe it's morning sleep. In other words, get up, get on with your day. Don't drink at midday. Don't mess around talking to people who perhaps are not quite as wise as somebody else might be, and use your time wisely. And this is what like we're doing this evening, this series of talks have been really, really interesting. And I'm really glad I signed up for them. And I think it's a really good way of spending an hour in the evening and getting something out of it. I'm sorry, I'm going on rather a lot, but I don't often say very much. But I just feel that without wisdom, and that comes with age as well, and a lifetime of studying and learning and observing the world around you. So that's rather a long-winded way of saying that I think we need to remember wisdom throughout all of this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yes, Ron. Yes.
Yes. Just to I'm agreeing with Jan. I think it's dangerous to not dangerous, but we shouldn't read any of these texts too literally, because you said it earlier. They were written in a very different time with very different social mores. And if we look at these things, morning sleep, midday wine, children's talk, what do they stand for in that society? And how do we translate it in our society? And I think everything that Jan said was spot on, that, you know, children's talk we could see as, you know, foolish talk. If we substituted the word, we know now, we see children differently. We know that it's important to listen to them. They had a completely different way of life back then. So what were they really saying? They meant foolish talk or trivial talk, or, you know, so I think there's a danger in reading these things too literally. That's all.
Thank you. I think you're right. Yes. Paula, yes.
I was wondering, you know, the audience that this is going to when it was written. If it's going towards Torah scholars that are sitting day in and day out studying, and it's, you know, maybe it's a way of saying, here, stop and smell the flowers, kind of stop all this intense studying, because God also exists in the chatter of children, and also in the smaller things, you know, that while study is important, you can gain wisdom also from things that you might see as follies.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't add anything to that. Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. Absolutely. Yeah. Rabbi Monique has looked into the nocha, and Monique, can you say, because I think what you told me was very interesting about nocha.
So where it says pleased, right? So kol sheruach habriot nocha hemenu. So whom men are pleased, God is pleased, right? But actually, I was playing around with the dictionary, and it also says kind, which is kind of fascinating, because then, like, it could be really, it could deteriorate or degrade into a personality contest, right? That, you know, if everybody likes me, God likes me. But actually, with whom men, one with whom men are kind, God is kind, right? So it's also, so God is kind when other people are kind to someone, right? But anyone from whom men are not kind, God is, and you can play with kind or pleased, whatever you want to do there, but it turns it into more about behavior towards each other rather than just personality, which I thought was really fascinating. Actually, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please, yes.
So, because I'm going to do this while I'm sitting here, Rashi has a comment about that second bit, that last bit. And he says, Rashi understands the last part of this Mishnah. So to refer to, so morning sleep, that's the one who oversleeps the time for the recital of the morning Shema. Midday wine, to one who chances drunkenness by drinking at noon. Children's talk, to one who spends his time listening to idle talk from young people, and attendance at the meeting places of the ignorant. One who spends his time among those who are occupied with vain matters and are thereby ignorant, which goes back to what you were saying, Rabbi Rene, near the beginning about, you know, when the term Amei Haaretz is used, it's used derogatorily. So that's, they're viewed as vain and don't have higher soulful purposes. But I think it also speaks to what other people were saying, that it comes from a particular time out of a particular time. And also I can't remember who made the comment about what audience is this directed at, because it sounds very much like, based on what Rashi's saying, that it's directed at people who are studying. Like this is all about the ones who study, how they need to stay focused. So that was it.
So thank you, Rabbi Monique. There's really a thread here in this chapter about awareness, self-awareness, us, with other people, us with God. There's this notion of, where you are, what your actions mean, and that your actions have consequences. And I wanted to leave you at the end of this today's session with a huge paradox, which is probably one of the most puzzling part of this chapter. Okay, so that's this one. Okay, where am I? And yeah, I mean, we could spend the rest of our life discussing that. Hakol tzafui ve'hareshut netuna. Everything is foreseen, and hareshut netuna, and the reshut is the authorization, but freedom of choice is granted. Uvetov haolam nidun, and the world is judged with goodness, and everything is in accordance with the preponderance of works. Wow. So let's just focus on the first bit, because it's a very complex Mishnah, very, very few words, but very, very profound. This is where I think Judaism is. Hakol tzafui v'hareshut netuya. And it refers to another passage in the book of Deuteronomy, something that we read as an alternative text for Yom Kippur. Choose life and choose the good and life and how is it said again? Yeah, choose life and not death, but you have a choice. So Hakol Tzafui, that means that everything is known by God. The tension between how can we be free if God knows everything? How can we be free if everything is written in advance? How can we have freedom of choice if God knows everything that is happening to us? So where is the tension? The tension is very strong here. So the way the rabbis resolve this tension is everything is revealed, and yet hareshut netuna, the permission is given. So Bartenura explains everything is foreseen. Everything that a man does in the innermost rooms is revealed in front of him. So that's the first part. Your life, where everything you do in your life is already written. And free will is given into the hand of man to do good and evil, as it is written. See, I have given in front of you today life, etc., etc. So let's take a few moments to unpack that. Hakol tzafui v'hareshut netuna. And I really want us to take it tonight, as as a way to finish our discussion tonight. We started with Da me'ain bata, know where you came from, and know where you're going to, and before whom you will give din v'cheshbon. You will, you will give accounts. You are accountable, and it ends with this. Very, very cryptic word, Hakol tzafui v'hareshut netuna. Everything is foreseen, everything is exists in a sense, in essence. Everything is there, and yet you have a freedom of choice. And I think it's a very nice way to combine the entire Mishnah. We eventually, at the end of everything, when everything is said, when everything, all the discussions and the study and the reflection and everything, all the ideas are shared and packed. At the end, the reshut is netuna. You, we, I, the collective I, we have a choice. We make the choices we want to make. And of course, in the Torah, it's, choose life. Of course, choose life. But the other part of a choice is also, you can choose, if you want, you can choose bad and death. But in that case, the consequences exist. Dam lifnei mi ata atid, before whom you will stand at the end of your lives. It's all there. So any final words before we conclude our lesson session tonight?
Yes, I feel, Rabbi, all these texts give you the minimum and the maximum, if you like, or the maximum and the minimum. And it's really up to you, your conscience, and how you lead your life. It's the choice you make in the end that is important. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love this, Flora. It gives you the minimum and the maximum. I think that's exactly where the tension is. The minimum and the maximum. Yeah, very good. Thank you. And I think it's a good way to finish tonight. We have a choice. We have a choice, but choices have consequences. And we don't make choice with the Amei Haaretz, with the ignorant. We make choice, in an assembly of people who can help you to make these choices. There's a lot of Mishnah which I didn't cover because we have only an hour, but there's a lot of 2 or 3 texts that focus on the idea of when people come together, they have to talk about Torah. So we decided we need to study, we need to understand what we're doing. Okay, any final thought before we conclude tonight? Okay, thank you for your contributions. It was very interesting. And next week, Rabbi Gabriel Kanter-Webber, who will lead you in the chapter 4 and also interesting conversation. And in the meantime, be well and make the right choices.